Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, thanks for tuning in. I'm Katie and today, as requested, I'm going to swatch my neon watercolours and create a picture with them at full neon. So a little bit about the paint. The brand is Mozart and they are a little similar to the Gansai paint, which is a Japanese watercolour. There are 8 colours and they're in large but shallow pans, but there's plenty in there. When I've added the water to the paint, it does look super neon, but it does revert back once the paint's dried, and it's quite creamy to work with, and when it applies directly onto the paper, it's quite thick. When I've swatched with the neat colour, I go in there with some clean water, and that spreads the colour out a bit more, and you get a bit more of a gradient. And these lighter tones that are created with the gradient, these are what I tend to use the paints for when I'm doing my usual work. That's what I'm after for my underpainting, because it does have a really nice pastel luminosity to it, in my opinion anyway. Oh, and just for the record, I have swatched these out on a watercolour paper tile, just so I can get a true representation of it. I will go into why I've used watercolour paper. Well, it's obvious why I've used it, but I will go into details a bit more as to how I fell back in love with these paints. And now all the swatching's done, it's time to get on with the painting. Now, I've mentioned before, I won't be using them in the way I usually use them. If you've seen the accordion sketchbook video, I do use them in there, but I use them more of a pastel tone rather than at full neon. But on this one, it's going to be as neon as I can get it. These paints do behave quite oddly, and I will go to that in a bit. I wanted to create something with a bit of a pop art feel, so portrait, gonna go really blocky with the details, but I'm gonna let those colours merge into each other as well. They swirl together really nicely, so I'm gonna use that to my advantage on this one. I've just put an underlayer of water down, and obviously I'm gone in there with the blues and the greens and let them do their thing. And then what I've done here is added a bit of the neon red to the neon blue to create a neon purple, which isn't very neon. I told you these paints were a bit weird, but that's just to add a little bit of depth into my character's hair. So when I first used these paints, I wasn't impressed. I'd used them with the water brush and it was on mixed media paper and it was awful. It was streaky, it was overly vibrant in some areas and washed out in others, and I really didn't like how inconsistent the opacity was either. I think I might have been using them wrong, but that's okay, we live and we learn, right? So I packed these paints away with no intention of using them ever again. However, I've moved house recently, and unpacking the materials, I stumbled across them again, and I thought, you know what, I'm going to give them a proper chance, and I'm going to use them on watercolour paper. And I played about with the colours a little, trying the different opacities, different dilution levels to see what I could get out of these paints. Unfortunately, the pastel tones are a winner for me. I'm just not keen on the neon ones, but that's my personal choice there. Now, I've noticed whilst using these neons that while they're sitting in my palette, the pigment particles are separating from the water. So I do have to keep going in there and stirring them back up a bit, and that's not usually what I experience with my White Nights watercolours, so this is why they're quite different. But not to be putting a downer on them completely, they do look quite nice when the colours are merging into one another. I'm just not very perhaps familiar with how these paints work, and I will learn, especially using them in a neon sense. These paints don't layer too great though, that's the only real problem I've got with these, especially at full capacity. They work fine when, like I say, I've used them as an underlayer and I've gone over them with your more traditional watercolours. It doesn't seem to reactivate them, but when I've applied them thickly, they do look streaky. And I've also found as well that the neon red and the neon pink, their hues were quite similar. The neon red's just a little bit warmer and darker, but it didn't really give me much chance to show huge tonal differences. So what I've decided to add to this, because the tones are so similar, is some black gouache paint, and I've used the rigger brush just to add the outline and the details and features to my character's face. And yeah, I have cheated a little bit. I've also added a bit of shadow in some areas where I thought the paints were lacking. If you've enjoyed this video, don't forget to hit that like button, and if you want to see more of my content, don't forget to subscribe and check out the other videos I've done too. I did forget to press the record button, but I also went in and added a few additional highlights with the Posca pens, and it just makes it pop and look a little bit more three-dimensional. Sorry about that, my bad. Anyway, we're coming up to masking tape time, so turn the volume up and enjoy. Well, it looks like my favourite washi tape let me down a little bit there, but that's okay because I've got the Posca pen handy and they are so useful for touching up areas like this. So it's all not lost. I hope you've enjoyed me playing with these paints and found it useful to see that they can work outside how I normally use them. Don't forget to hit the like button and make sure you subscribe to my channel so you don't miss out on future videos. And I just want to say thank you so much for watching and I'll see you soon. Bye!